Hey folks, in today's video I'm getting a chance to have hands-on experience with Motorica's Enterprise tooling and share it with you all. If you haven't heard of Motorica, it is an animation synthesis tool that can be used to generate dense locomotion animations based on existing animation data, which makes it ideal for systems like motion matching where you need animation coverage for every tiny action. So today's video we're going to be looking over the tools and what they offer, and then I'm going to give my thoughts at the end. But first, a big shout out to Motorica, who not only sponsored this video, but sponsored the 1000 member challenge for the Tech Anim Corner Discord community. So here we are inside of the Motorica tools. There's three main components to these tools. So there's the motion stage, the motion factory, and then we've got the style cloning. Before we dive into the tools, we do need to talk about styles, as these are a foundational concept inside of Motorica. This is their terminology for an animation movement type, and this defines the gait of a character and how they move. It even donates subtle changes such as the difference between a crouch movement and a stealth crouch movement. These styles are created from existing animations, typically dense motion capture data, that the system then uses to train and learn from, and then it can extrapolate and create new animations matching that input data. Very similar to how ML Deformer works. Motorica has a ton of styles by default, with everything from like a zombie to a military character, and these are all trained on Motorica's own animation data. But the cool part is the tools offer you the ability to import your own animation data to create your very own unique style, and then you can use it across the rest of the Motorica tools. This is done via the style cloning section. Obviously this means that you'll have to provide animation data for training, and then that in turn will generate a unique style based on that data. This means that you can capture a performer's movement likeness and then generate metric matching movement for that movement style. Unfortunately, I don't have my own animation data to train a style today, but this is the method that they use to train all of the existing styles within Motorica. So next up, the motion stage. This is one of the Motorica editors for generating animations. We can import our specific move types and metrics, and it's going to generate animations before our very eyes. The interface is going to look very similar to those who are familiar with 3D packages. You've got your viewport, you've got your timeline at the bottom, and you've got the main control panel on the right hand side. From the main control panel, the first tab is styles. This allows us to set that specific animation style that we just covered. There's lots to choose from here. Standard humans, got some zombies, maybe a katana guy, maybe we could go with a combat handgun. We can also set the scale of the character here, which will preserve our movement metrics. So as you can see, if we make the character bigger, the distance traveled is still going to be the same. So if we have giant characters, we should tweak this value. But with those settings applied, the real fun begins in the motion tab. So immediately we have a lot of options here. There is an import root motion option, which we'll return to in a little while. But there's also the preset mode. There's tons of movement presets available, from strafing to plant turns, turn on spots, spins, or even arcs. And then we have the preset customization under there. So this presets allow us to define particular movement types. By default, this is a straight, so it's going to be walking in a straight line. For demonstration purposes, let's just start with the straight animation for now. The customization settings underneath are basically our input metrics. For this movement type, we can customize the starting speed and the ending speed, as well as the duration of the animation. Let's change this to be a run start transition. We're going to put 0 on the start speed, so we're going to start from stationary, and then let's put 6 meters per second on the end speed. As we change these settings, we're going to get a live preview of the trajectory, but not the actual animation data. We need to click the animate button and it's going to calculate the animation for us. And then we have a start run animation. It's as simple as that. If we want to change any metrics, just change the value and click animate again. If we scroll down here, there's a few more advanced options. There's two modes of simulation, spring-based and kinematic. For those familiar with Unreal, kinematic is more akin to the CMC character movement component, whereas the spring-based is more in line with the next generation mover system. With these settings, we can customize the acceleration and deceleration rates for our start-stop, and maybe if we want to accelerate a little slower, we can drop that down. If we want to accelerate a little bit faster, we can increase it, and we get live updates the entire time. There's also some turn behavior settings there, but this isn't going to work on this straight preset, so let's go try a turn animation to demonstrate what we can do with these settings. So let's set up a forward turn preset, and let's do 5 meters per second, a 90-degree turn over 4 seconds, and let's hit generate. Now with our plant turn animation, let's return to the rotation advanced settings and see what we can do. So these settings are split into two, with the easing method and easing curve applying just to the trajectory, whereas the turn rate and turn style apply to the character animation itself. These options are quite self-explanatory. They do what it says on the tin. The turn rate changes the turn rate of the character, and the curve switches between types like linear and easy and out. But one of the neat things in these rotation options is the turn style. We can actually customize when the character turn happens. The trajectory will stay the same, but we can change what happens to the character animation. So if we do a pre-turn, it's going to turn before the action, and if we do a post-turn, it's going to turn after the action. Now there are a few more options to customize our animation, and we can find them in the last tab there, options. There is a loop option to make sure that the first and last frames match. Here you can see the poses aren't matching at the beginning and end. We simply click loop and regenerate. That's going to fix that for us. We also have a mirror option. Now this doesn't actually mirror the trajectory, this mirrors the character animation inside of the trajectory. So you can see the character's pose here. If we just hit mirror, generate, now it's flipped. But now one of the coolest options here that really impresses me is the phase shift. Anyone who's made a locomotion system will know how tricky coverage is for phase shifts. For those that don't know, phase shifts refer to the passing phase of the leg. So whether that leg is at the crossing or extended phase, and this applies for both legs. So there's 4 phases that you can be in. When blending into and out of animations, the phase can be in any one of those 4, and trying to blend in and out of the wrong phase can give some really weird results on the legs. Motorica have thought about a solution to this. So if we look for our plant turn start frame, we can see it starts on this particular leg. If we use the phase shift option here and go to 2 and click generate, we're now going to get the exact same animation but with the phase shift altered. Now that's very cool, but that's not all it can do. It can actually do all 4 phases. So let's hit 4 and click generate again. Now if we scrub back to that frame, we have both the crossing and extended phases for both legs on the same action, meaning now we have total animation coverage for all possible combinations here. This is really great stuff. Once we're happy with our animations that we've made in the motion stage, you can literally just click the export button and it's going to download an FBX of that animation data. And below the export button, you'll also find the character FBX as well, which contains the characterized FBX skeleton. So you can drop this into Maya or Mobu and easily retarget to your own skeleton in seconds. Let's take a step back to the motion tab and have a look at that import root motion that we missed earlier. This tool allows us to import a custom trajectory from an FBX file and instead of using one of the presets, and then we can generate animations from it. Let's take a quick step into Maya, and we've got the Motorica character here. I'm just going to add some quick keyframes and some small translations and rotations to create a custom trajectory. Let's bake this data down and export it out to an FBX. Now let's pop back into Motorica, import the data into this tool, and let's see how it holds up. If we just click generate, and yeah, well, speaks for itself really. The last feature I wanted to showcase here is an experimental idle pose keying. This allows you to add your own idle stance and it'll attempt to add that pose while stationary. Let's give it a try on a turn in place animation. We can add our idle pose here. If we click generate, we can see the results. It's going to add some idle keyframes onto the timeline and it'll show when those poses are at 100%. In between those frame rates, it's doing a pretty good job, but outside of those ranges, like before and after, it's deviating quite a bit unfortunately. But this is a work in progress experimental feature, so we might just have to watch this space. Now moving over to the Motion Factory, this is another animation generation editor. Imagine the motion stage but on steroids. This allows us to generate bulk animation dance cards or cut clips. Where the motion stage focuses on editing a single animation, the Motion Factory allows us to apply wholesale metrics and apply that to dozens of animations at once. When we open the interface, we're going to be greeted by 2 modes, simplified or custom trail sets. So let's start with simplified. This is effectively a wizard to navigate through the generation of comprehensive animation datasets with a lot of coverage. Just like the motion stage, we're going to start by picking our style and sizing. But this time, now we're going to select what gaits we want. Let's do a walk, run and sprint. Then the next interface allows us to define those metrics, how fast the character can move and if you can even strafe during that gait. Then we pick our movement mode. This defines the speed reactivity of the data. Dynamic is going to be very unrealistic motion, but it's going to feel very responsive. Sluggish is going to look incredible, but it's going to feel terrible. Realistic is kind of halfway between those two. It's a decent middle ground, so let's just continue with that. And finally, we have the animation type. So this is long or short. The long option is going to output dance card routines. For those familiar with motion matching, these are long uncut takes with dozens of actions per cut. Short, on the other hand, is going to generate individual animations for each movement. Now, long can provide great continuity data, but short is much more manageable data-wise. The final step is the customization for these movements. Do we want looping cycles? Do we want speed dampening? Speed dampening basically allows us to have different speeds depending on directions. So for some games, walking backwards might be a little bit slower than walking forwards, and this supports that in the generating of the data. And then finally, we have a review of all of our settings before we click continue. Now we will return to an interface that looks very similar to the motion stage, but now we can see all of our animations have been automatically generated by the wizard on the left. We now have a nice folder for all the walks, the idles, the sprints, and contained within there are the snakes, the stops, the spins, the starts. There's a lot of really good animations in here. So there's a few final options we can customize in here, such as setting the generation for phase shifts for animations, or even setting if it's a looping sequence. Once we are happy with this data, we can just click advance to the final step, and it's going to generate every single one of these animations and download a giant zip containing all of them. This is going to take a minute, so while we wait, let's check out the custom trail set interface that we missed earlier. This editor allows us to design our very own dance card routine for use in Motorica. We don't really have any yet, so let's just create a new one at the top here. We can choose empty slate. And now we're going to get this bird's eye view, and this is where we can begin to create our dance cards. And these are referred to as trails in here, and we're going to have to add a new one on the left hand side. We can begin chaining actions together to create our dance card. In here, actions are referred to as segments. So we do have a starting segment, it's just standing still. So we can add another segment, let's make it walk. But we're going to have to add another gate here, so let's just add the walk gate quickly. And then let's make it move 100 units. And now we can just add another segment. And now we can start stringing these things together, and you can see how we're starting to build up a custom routine. Now, when we're happy with the movement, we can go to the motion factory up top to preview this routine as an animation. So in terms of pipeline, this seems to step in when the simplified wizard isn't giving you a dance card that you want. You can come into this editor, create your own routine, and add it to the system to then generate animations from. So now that we've got these animations downloaded, let's take a look. And we've got a little folder structure in here that matches the ones from the motion factory. All of our individual actions have been exported as individual FBX clips, which is really nice. So now I think we should pop over into Unreal to see what we can cook up with this data. We've also got the Motorica Unreal plugin installed in here, and this is going to help us automatically import and set up all of our data, just streamlining the integration a little bit for us. So first we're going to pick the directory that contains our animations. And this next window allows us to customize the import, which we're going to do, because instead of importing onto the Motorica skeleton, which is what the data is authored for, we're going to have to remap it onto a skeleton of our choice, which in this case, we're going to do it onto the Unreal Mani. We can also make it set up our post-search databases, and I'm going to be setting up motion matching shortly, so this is really ideal for us. Make sure to set that schema as well, and all we have to do is hit import and let it do its thing. Okay, so that's now finished importing. So we have a few folders. We've got the pose search, the retargeted, and the source. The pose search is just our motion matching databases, whereas the retargeted and source are going to be animation folders for the retargeted skeleton and the Motorica skeleton respectively. So I'm going to take the PSD files here, and I'm actually going to create a little motion matching setup just to demonstrate what we can do. It's going to take a little while, so I'm going to skip ahead and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, welcome back. So I've got a very basic motion matching setup here. We've got a very simple animation blueprint. It's got the motion matching node with some foot placement, an offset root bone, and there is a little bit of CMC customization in there. And this is what I've managed to tune in a few hours, and I think it's looking pretty snazzy in no time at all. Now, it's only taken a few hours to get to this point from actually starting in the Motorica tools to getting to here in Unreal, which is crazy considering this would usually take teams months to do. It's really going to be closing that delta. So all in all, I think it's a really incredible tool. I think it's got some really good use cases, especially for realistic games locomotion. It can solve some pretty big problems. Often I've found in game studios, if you've got very little animation resources, then you're usually trying to make the most out of nothing. But if you've got lots of animation resources, then you're getting lots of animators creating tons of variants of the same animation, doing lots of tedious work. Instead of trying to do fancy techniques to maximize animation coverage, or getting a team of animators for months, if not years, doing every tiny animation combination, you can just brute force the problem of content via this technology. In theory, this could save months of dev time for animators and technical animators alike. Instead of doing realistic locomotion 10 on realistic sequel 15, we can now focus on more on the fun aspects of animation, such as character moments for attacks, takedowns, and combat, instead of just doing the same realistic locomotion every time between different titles. One of the other use cases I was actually thinking of that this would be particularly used for is cinematics and previs. That tool that allows you to generate your own trajectory seemed kind of destined for this. Like normally you would already block out a previs with a T-pose character, but just export that through Motorica. And now you've got a pretty high fidelity animation. It just seems like this technique was made for it. Now don't get me wrong, this tool isn't without its weaknesses and it does have a few blind spots. The biggest one is probably that it can't do stylized content. It relies heavily on input data to create your own style, so training it to move in a stylized manner is going to obviously be quite difficult. Its bread and butter is just realistic animation where you can train on dense mocap data. But that's another weakness, that you need dense mocap data to train your own style on this. And as a technical animator, I think one of the biggest drawbacks is that the initial system isn't actually on your skeleton. There's this intermediate step of retargeting that's required to map from the Motorica skeleton to your skeleton. There's no customization for skeletons yet. Like, yeah, you can make the scale a little bit bigger, but you can't customize limb lengths. And there's going to be this layer of difference that gets introduced between their system and your target system. If maybe down the line they can modify it to be skeleton agnostic, I think this would be a fantastic upgrade. And the tool does have some experimental features that are still in development and aren't quite behaving as expected. The tri-idle pose was a big one that we covered. But overall, I do think this is some pretty insane technology. I think it's not only super powerful, but it's also incredibly fast. Like, you see the kind of output I'm getting. This is very much in line with technology like the machine learning deformer, where you can input deformations and it just learns what they should be. This is just the same. You input and train your own animations and you can extrapolate more data from there. Well, I hope you enjoyed the walkthrough today. What do you think about the Motorica tools? Was there any part of it that stood out particularly that you liked, or anything that you think they could improve on? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. And don't forget to join us over at the Tech Anim Corner Discord community. We now have techanimcorner.com and I hope to see you over there. Thanks for watching, folks.